This is Smooth 98.1. We love music and we love life. It's a hump of the week, Wednesday morning, 32 minutes past 7 a.m. My name is Ayokunmi Kekere. When time to take you into the papers, take a look at the headlines making the news across Nigeria. This is Freshly Pressed. It's an interactive session, as it always is. So we're looking forward to you sharing your thoughts with us on WhatsApp. You can do that by sending your messages to the number 0809 440 981 0809 440 981. That is the WhatsApp number. Also, join us on YouTube where we're streaming live at Smooth 981 FM Lagos. Smooth 981 FM Lagos. Just a quick reminder, though, your messages, please keep them as short and concise as possible to make them easy to read, and we can get through all of the messages or as many messages as possible this morning. I know there's always that feeling to write a lengthy message, but just try to keep it compact. Makes it easier to read and get through as well. All right, my analysts are in for the morning to take a look at what's going on. Devoe and Lakunle are in with me today. Good morning to you, gentlemen. Great to have you on Freshly Pressed.
Good morning, Ayo. Good morning, Devoe. Good morning, everywhere where you're listening to us this morning. And thank God for the rains of last night. Everywhere appears cool this morning.
Morning, Devoe.
Morning, world. Morning, Smooth. Ewa, Lakunle. Cool. Egbin Bawa.
I was kind of expecting that particular line because we're starting off the back of that particular statement made by Devoe, and we're taking a look at a story coming out of The Guardian this morning. Yes, that's where we're starting our journey, and it's all about hunger, as over 31.8 million Nigerians, especially women and children, are currently facing acute hunger and malnutrition. Now, according to statistics provided by the 2024 Cater Harmonized Report, the surge in food commodity prices, which is as a result of the removal of fuel subsidy, in addition to security challenges, has placed millions of Nigerians in a precarious situation. Devoe, it is not looking good. The numbers are telling a very scary story.
Yes, and I think these numbers are even, what I call it, understated, because for them to say 40% of a population of 200 million, that means we're talking about just roughly below 80 million people. And already this report is coming from the Cater Harmonized Reports. You also know the MBS had already put out that 134 million people, that was as of early last year, were suffering multi-dimensional poverty, of which food was among the list of things that those Nigerian citizens, who are not just numbers, but real people scattered around the nation, both in urban and rural areas, are suffering housing, suffering education, suffering power, and at the top of the list, suffering staple food. And the what do you call it? The United Nations puts food poverty on the basis of one's ability to afford a meal per day.
Right.
Now, it roughly puts it at $1. $1 currently in Naira terms is about 1,500. And you know that many Nigerians, especially given the twin economic policies, have struggled to eat. Now, what it means is that if they eat today, Wednesday, their next meal is going to be on Friday. That's how bad it is. Now, this report states that since the introduction of those policies, that is the removal of subsidy, which only went away just to come back double the amount that we've been paying, as well as the harmonization of the FX regime, given the fact also that insecurity has challenged farmers from going to the farm and also in harvesting, have led to high inflation that has dogged the nation for about a year now. So the report was saying that from MBS statistics, inflation had dogged food prices to the tune of over 200% within the last 1 year. Now, when you have a 200% food inflation rise, that's even an average cost. It means you have in between 400 to 150% rise, which is more of the real picture, because even though headline inflation was put at 30% and finally adjusted to 40, if you enter the markets to check food prices, from this list, you see a bag of gari going for as high as 80,000 naira. A bag of rice, 50 kg rice, going as high as 80 to 100,000. A bag of beans going for as high as 70,000. Yam, a tuber of yam that used to be just shortly below 2,000 naira, going for as high as 8,000 naira. You know, so literally staple food, not to talk of maize that's not even available in commercial quantities in the market, which is the primary reason half of the poultry industry have shut down, and the price of eggs in the market, one egg is now about 150 to 250 naira. Now, basically, the report is stating that through the Food Agri Organization, the FAO of the world, they're saying that if Nigeria does not adopt immediate measures to address this food insecurity, we are upon the brink of human starvation, the worst kind of human starvation. I remember when I said Nigeria is going through a famine and people reacted. This is a clear documentation of that level of impoverishment. And it's not far. We didn't get to this point overnight. The gradual, lack of attending to the agri sector, not just in providing security for farmers, but not going into mechanized farming, which would give us the commercial yields that we require not only to achieve food sufficiency, but even introduce exports that would bring revenue to Nigeria. We didn't do all these things. And I've said it before, food is not grown overnight. So our borders have been closed for a while simply because we were trying to support local farmers. But you're not going to grow food overnight. Even the lowest yielding crops like vegetables, maize, rice, take a 3-month period. So if you plant rice now, you're going to calculate August, September, October, November before you're harvesting. Tell me why this administration, since it's almost a year and a half, could not implement these processes in conjunction with the state government. The point here is we are starving simply because we have not declared a state of emergency in food production. Unfortunately, this is the plight of Nigerians. Palliatives that never get to the people in terms of rice distribution will not even move the needle by an inch. So I still call on this government the same way the president, when he was a governor, the day we had flooding in this nation, he came out, entered the flood with his 2 feet, and looked at a way of resolving the flooding crisis in Lagos. They need to roll up their sleeves, work with the state government under a state of emergency situation, and begin to address the comparative advantages for crops and livestock, which our Nigerian states have. So it's not a case that we don't have. We have, but we've not been able to get our act together. I'm sorry. We've moved from a hunger protest, and now literally Nigerians are starving. It will lead to unrest simply because you will have lots of people in various locations, both urban and rural areas, who are walking the streets hungry and angry. And at this time, they're not going to call a protest. They will start taking actions which we know will raise the level of insecurity in the country. So Nigerians, if you have an ear and you want to live a secure life in this country, we need to get serious about the state of emergency regarding food production.
All right. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on that one, Devoe. Lakunle, let me come to you really quickly. I mean, in about a minute or thereabouts before we move to the next story, just share your thoughts on this one. I'm pretty sure you have one or two things you'd love to add to this conversation concerning food.
Okay, so yesterday, somehow on the social media, I came across a video. Someone went to one of the big markets in Lagos and was asking about prices of commodities, and the traders were giving a significant lower prices compared to what we had last month, 2 months ago, and all that. And the reflection of that on me is that we're still where we were maybe 100 years ago. In the season of every product, there's plenty of it out there. Then out of the season, we struggle. Beyond the flooding of the last 3 years, the food inflation and all of that, there's still need for us to think about storing the excesses of the seasonal products so that when it is out of season, it will be available for us, so that when times like this come, there will be something to go back to. Let us remember, all of us know the story of Potiphar, of the Pharaoh, Joseph, and the famine. 7 years of plenty, 7 years of the lean one. We all talk these stories every day. We teach it in our churches, we teach it in our mosque every time, but we're not applying the principle of that to surviving as a country. That's the thinking we need to put into food production and storage. Whatever we need to do, we need to have thinking people in government who can make this happen.
Definitely, definitely. All right, let's move over to the point. Let's pick up right there. And Lakunle, we've been waiting to talk about this particular story. Now, 6 state governments, including Ekiti, Ebonyi, Jigawa, Yobe, Nasarawa, and Bayelsa, have spent about 160 billion naira on airport projects that opposition politicians and aviation professionals as well have classified as unviable. And Lakunle, it seems like, once you're a governor right now, building an airport is the in thing. It's in season, if I can put it that way.
Okay, so Nigeria sits on about approximately 950,000 square kilometers of land, right? So today, according to FAN, we have 51 airports, right? Of the 51, all right, 10 are designated international airports, 23 are designated domestic airports, 4 are military airports, 13 are airstrips. The airstrips, I imagine, don't fall under the direct administration of Federal Airport Authority, but the military airports also don't. So let's assume that we have 33 under the administration of FAN, right? Now let's look at it in terms of usability. I went to school many years ago in Ilorin, right? And every time I pass that airport, it is always desolate. I don't imagine that the situation has changed. The only time the airport was active in those days was Hajj period, when people are going to Hajj. It was a Hajj takeoff point.
And that's once a year.
Yes, practically like once a year. Today, maybe once or twice a flight goes to Ilorin and comes back the same day, So that is it. But meanwhile, in our airports, you have to maintain a full complement of staff, right? It doesn't matter whether it's one plane that comes a day. Yeah, that's one. Now, let's just go across the Niger to the southeast. 5 states, only one does not have an airport of its own. Yep. The total land mass of all the 5 states put together is about 30,000 square kilometers, right? Oyo State, one state, is about 28,000 square kilometers. That's approximately about the same size. Now, imagine Oyo State having 5 airports inside, or 4 airports inside. That's the situation in the southeast. Now, the airports that our current Minister of Works built in, that should be Ebonyi. How many times a year, how many times in the last 1 year have you heard that a plane flew to Ebonyi, for example? So it is the idea in our minds as the people that a governor, a president, a local government chairman is not working if we don't see brick and mortar. Like somebody said jokingly that these kind of projects are probably the ways where monies that will not be accounted for goes out of government coffers. We spend so much on these things. How about developing human capacity? For example, I would imagine that, yes, there's argument for it that, okay, it is developmental, but developmental at the expense of what, right? So in Jigawa, Dutse, I think it was Saminu Turaki that was governor when they built one. Since they built that airport, how many planes have flown to that airport except when VIPs or chartered planes go there? And this is a huge cost on FAN, because FAN says aside from them building the airport, once the airport is built, they transfer it to FAN. Now, FAN says 80% of their revenues comes from only Abuja, Lagos, Port Harcourt. 3 of
that's ridiculous.
51, 80%. So, this thing about the 20% rule, if we apply it here, it is inverse that we're seeing here. 3 airports of 51 is bringing 80% of the income. So what is the economic viability? Now, this number does not include the one that Ogun State is building. It does not include the one Kogi is building. So that means that there are still going to be more airports, right? So I would imagine in my mind, for example, the five southeastern states, the governors come together and say, look, we want to have one airport. And from these airports, to build arterial roads that will serve all of us from this airport, that we can get to each state capital in 1 hour maximum. Let's contribute the money to build it. And they build directly from this airport straight to those state capitals, for example. It will be a whole lot cheaper than what we see. This is 160 billion of monies that could have gone into something else. We're talking about the percentage of out-of-school children in all our states, but the governors don't see a reason to spend that kind of money in making sure that children go to school. Or we're talking about mortality rate, infant mortality rate. They are not seeing a reason to provide medical facility to reduce it. We're talking about the number of people who die of malaria every day, but to build the airport is more important to our administrators and governors than to do all these things. I think we need to have a rethink of what is development in our mind, especially when it comes to things like this.
So many things need to change, mindsets and so on and so forth. We'll pick up on the other side of a quick break right here. Take a look at some more stories making the rounds. And of course, take your thoughts on WhatsApp messages piling up already. Smooth 98.1. Freshly Pressed will be back in a bit. Don't go anywhere. Things are happening. We'll have to be as swift as possible to at least get at least the next 2 stories in.
Yeah, sure.
The way time flies in.
It's Devoe that starts off with taking 11 minutes, 12 minutes to do one story.
I will have you in court for those allegations.
My lawyer will be waiting for you there. Don't worry.
Okay.
My lawyer will be waiting for you. No need to have me.
You come and stand in front of the magistrate.
My chief judge of, except you don't do Lagos. Chief judge of Lagos is my in-law.
Yeah, okay.
We'll take the meter story now. I'll take messages though.
Yeah.
Okay.
Meter story.
All right. Welcome back to Freshly Pressed on a Hump of the Week Wednesday morning. This is Smooth 98.1 and the Smooth Breakfast. My name is Ayokunmi Kekiriako. Thank you for being a part of the ride. Join us as we're taking a look at what's going on in the dailies. Send your messages in to us on WhatsApp on 0809 440 981. You can also catch us on the live stream on YouTube. We're streaming at Smooth 981 FM Lagos. Devoe and Lakunle are still in, bringing some clarity to the stories that we're taking in the papers. Let me just take a couple of messages really quickly before we get back into the groove of things. This is coming from Daya from Fagba, who says, Al Jazeera reported in the state of Vice President Shettima that 26 million people were going to die of starvation because of insecurity, that farmers can't go to the farm, no food to eat, many children were in the hospital from one illness or starvation situation. Instead of this government to solve their own policies, they are flying up and down as if all is well. But the education minister, he's following the legacy of Adamu, who doesn't know about education. We have square pegs in round holes in this government. It's a shame the worst are ruling the best of us. Adibwe says, amidst food inflation and hunger, the presidency, executive, and Senate governors lived lavishly with taxpayers' money without remorse or consequences. The truth is, President Bola Tinubu doesn't have the capacity to solve the nation's problems. All his policies, emergency meetings on food, insecurity, and the rest has yielded zero. Can't you see, AY? Well, my eyes are open. I can see what's going on. Let me see. Yinka Bolu says, but when these airports are about to be constructed, do the citizens just go dumb? I mean, that's a good question to ask. What happens to the citizens when these airports are about to be constructed? Do they not have a say? Do they not have their own perspective at that point in time? But I guess at the end of the day, Yinka, the governors will do whatever it is they want to do, really. Barrister Danukuda says all the airports built so far by some governors are white elephant projects and conduits for siphoning of public funds. All right, thank you for your thoughts. Keep them coming in. Let's get back into the stories, Devoe. Let's pick up on this particular one coming from the Punch. The federal government and the states have raised 100 billion naira for the procurement of prepaid electricity meters. Now, Minister of Power Adebayo Adelapu said this was under the Presidential Meter Initiative program. Devoe, what's your take on this?
Yes, Adilabu was speaking as the power minister recently about the aggregation of about 100 billion to procure electricity meters, which have been the bane or have dogged discos for many years now. As you know, discos have not been able to meet their financial projections or targets, partly to inadequate electricity supply from the transmission network of Nigeria. And even, as you know, we're at 5,000 megawatts if the grid has not collapsed. However, despite that, they're still not even able to collect the revenue on this utilized electricity because out of the 12 million customers that all the discos have in total, only about 5 million are metered, and the bulk of them are Band A. And even a lot of Band A customers do not have meters. So they're saying there's a shortfall of about 7 million people, which the president has given approval for this procurement. However, one must know that the supply of these meters has been challenged because the discos who naturally should give it to their customers free of charge have not had the finance and to their reason because of the inadequate tariffs that people are paying. So it's an argument that will go on every day, which is still why they created the Band A option, which is the 20% who pay most of the bills in commercial areas in this country should actually pay the highest rates. And for those of you who are in Band A like me, we're paying 3 times the amount that we paid since the subsidy was removed. Now, unfortunately, you would say that if you're going to charge me so high, then you better give me a meter that I know how much I'm consuming. Because just imagine someone who is paying 3 times high is having to pay an estimated bill. You literally want to suffocate the individual or the business. Now, the problem is that this supply of meters, which was supposed to be democratized through the presidential meter scheme, has been bastardized by a lot of corruption. Because a meter, a single phase meter that should go for 80,000 and a triple phase meter that should go for 150K, I mean, you can ask our audience, many of them have had to pay times 2, times 3 to the discos just to even get their own meter. Some people have even debated that it's the discos that are pushing for people not to get meters because they earn more when they estimate a bill to you. So, but I think with this 100 billion, the power minister needs to state the timeline because the production of meters locally has not even worked. The importation of meters has not even worked. He needs to put the timeline instead of just saying that 100 billion is available. Let them put the timeline out. Let's know the distribution and how long it will take to get this 7 million customers metered. What we've seen is that they intend to do 2 million every year for the next 5 years. Well, that's a plan, but I want to know when those meters are going to be coming into the country.
A timeline, specifics to know exactly how that is going to pan out. Lakunle, I'm coming to you right now, but let me just give a couple of messages really quickly so that voices can actually be heard. Dami from Ikeja says, it's ironic that so many in our society are hungry, while post-harvest losses amount to over 3.5 trillion naira in the last year. Our leaders are simply not interested in feeding the people. P.S. No state of emergency will solve the unseriousness of our elite. Tony says, how does yet another airport in a nation where the number of people that literally cannot afford to eat 3 meals a day, let alone fly, make sense? This country beggars belief, honestly. Let me see here. Also talking to us. Babatunde Alao says, some of the airports Good one. There's no plan to tackle food shortages at the moment. Paper policy can't solve food shortages. Palliatives can't. No, palliatives can't. But for government to deliberately grow food by itself and tackle insecurity. Okay, some of the airports are very unnecessary, but they built them to make name for themselves and tactically steal money from the project. And Abeokuta, there are bridges that can never be put to use or doesn't serve any purpose. They only do projects that are not relevant. I'm sorry, we don't have strategic leaders. All we have are emperors. Thank you for sharing your thoughts there. And let me see here. Jane says metering will not work because within the organization, people are profiting from estimated billing. Exactly what Devoe was alluding to. Lakunle, let's quickly take the story from the Nigerian Tribune, where the chairman of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, Ola Olukoyede, has urged the National Assembly to enact legislation supporting the government's whistleblower policy. Now, whistleblowers in Nigeria, it's never a good mix, really. But now he's looking for the National Assembly to enact legislation to support that policy. Your thoughts really quickly.
So I want to assume that the places where we copied this whistleblowing idea from, they have a law that back it up. I want to also assume that Mr. Olukoyede is either a lawyer or an accountant. I'm not sure which one he is, right? And if he is a lawyer, he should then know that it's not enough to just speak about it. So if the National Assembly don't do it and you desire it, what happens? So why don't you from your organization direct lobby of the National Assembly? We know where we copy these things from. For example, in the Americas, the FBI, they have a lobby in the Capitol. So why can't the EFCC have a lobby in the National Assembly of Nigeria and lobby to get this thing passed? This law, if passed, truly will give legal protection, legal backing to people who are willing to give up information about things that EFCC wants to catch. I hope that we will be able to get it over the line, and it will be interesting to see what happens and how we use, because today there is no law except for just pronouncements. If you whistle blow and we catch the person, we'll give you 5% or 10% of the proceeds. So what happens to me after? What happens to me? Am I protected from the person or the people I whistle blew against? So those kind of so those are the kind of things that we expect to see from that kind of a law. And what is the punishment for those who give away whistleblowers from within the enforcement agency itself, so that I can know that when I'm whistleblowing, no member of the law enforcement agents that I've gone to report to will give me away to the people I whistleblow on, and so on and so forth. Right. So we expect to see it happen. Hopefully, if it does, it will be a good one to protect everybody around the ecosystem.
All right. Let's round up with some messages here. Ajayi Oloninuwa says, the directive effect of removal of fuel subsidy and floating the naira on the foreign exchange markets is the astronomical increase in the prices of foodstuffs, leading to severe malnutrition. Unfortunately, no meaningful efforts to ameliorate the situation. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. This is Tony from Marine Beach says, whatever happened to the pyramids on our naira notes? It's all become history. Successive administrations have handled agriculture that was once our economic mainstay with kids' gloves, simply because they will now get oil money. Nigeria can never move forward until it's restructured. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. Roland says, the discos make more money in estimated billing. That is why they are making sure that prepaid metering does not work. Nigeria. Joseph Meunier says, it's really unfortunate the government, NERC and discos are the biggest scam organizations put together. Just imagine NERC said only band A are those with incremental tariffs. But I tell you, I'm under band C, and my tariff has been increased since 3 months ago. And the discos have made it extremely difficult to obtain prepaid meters. May God bless Nigeria. Indeed, may God bless Nigeria. Mr. Quent says, moribund states embarking on airport projects are just ways governors of those states use to stack monies abroad. First of all, 70% of the components used to construct airports are imported. Monies in foreign currency will be sent abroad to pay for these items. You don't need rocket science to fill in the dots. And finally here, this is from Ajayi. Okay, I think I've taken this one already. Inka Bolu says, for instance, Delta State has 2 airports, including one in Asaba, which is just 30 minutes away from Onitsha. Yet, despite this proximity, Former Governor Obiano went ahead and built an airport for Anambra and still won his second term in office. Similarly, even though Enugu and Okorie have airports, Ebonyi proceeded to build one as well. If it's not airports, it's unnecessary flyover bridges, and yet the people remain silent.
Quickly, just to add, so that they will not say
there's no time. We're out of time.
Ibadan to Osogbo is less than 45 minutes drive. There's an airport in Ibadan. There's a plan to build one in Osogbo.
Nigeria, the gift that keeps on giving. Thank you so much, Lakunle and Devoe, for joining me this morning to make sense of all these stories. Always a pleasure having you guys on.
Right. Thank you for having me.
Chop.
Have a great Wednesday, Devoe. Thank you so much, as always. Thank you to all of you for listening and sending your messages in as well. Freshly Pressed will make a return tomorrow at 7:30 on the Smooth Breakfast. Meanwhile, keep it tuned. At 8:15, we're going to get into the locker room with Sega. Don't go anywhere. Press on Smooth 28.1.